Finally a first on my channel in both content and creation method. This is Pokemon FireRed with only Krabby. First, I'd like to mention that this playthrough was originally streamed over on my Twitch, then I took the VODs and edited them down into this video. As I write this, the run isn't complete yet, but it's moving along quickly. As with many other challenge runs made by many others, I will be following similar rules. I can only use Krabby in battle, others are used for HMs, no items in battle, but held items are allowed. Of course, no cheats or exploits as well. Going into this, I didn't know where the difficulty would lie, but I chose Krabby from favoritism rather than stat pool. It turned out to take a lot more grinding and preparation than I would have anticipated, but I guess it could have been expected from an unevolved Pokemon. Before we get too far into it, go ahead and make a prediction if you think we can make it to the top, and maybe guess some places that we struggled, some of them I didn't even expect. Now, to still keep things as challenging as possible, I replaced Squirtle with Krabby from the get-go, so our rival would have Bulbasaur, easily the hardest for us to deal with. Also, the rival's name was chosen by chat, because I was struggling to come up with one for some reason. With this, it brings us to our very first battle. But before we can get into that, I think now would be the best time to talk a little bit more about our little guy Krabby. While boasting an impressive attack stat, and not so shabby defense either, those are about the only two stats this little guy really has. For his moves, by level up there's nothing. He does get a few decent physical moves on his own, a staple being Stomp, at least for me. Having decent power with the chance to flinch our opponents is a key tool for winning battles, without having to spend extra time grinding to do more damage. In terms of TMs and HMs, there is actually some good coverage that we definitely don't get otherwise, which may end up giving us the edge in battles later on in the game. As for early game though, yeah, we have to grind a few levels before we can even get our first physical move, so there wasn't really a chance against our first rival fight. Luckily, it's not required to complete the challenge. With the battle behind us though, we're able to set out with our pal Krabby, which we named Dragoon by the way. I guess I somehow didn't get that part. While grinding to level 12 before taking on the second rival fight, albeit optional, I decided to try it and challenge the gym leaders at level cap, similar to Nuzlockes and other challenge runs. Granted, the thought of doing so wasn't kept alive long. We'll expand on that later though. For now, after nearly an hour of grinding, we reach level 12 and finally have our first physically attacking move. Our true strength can finally be unleashed. Our target? The second rival fight, a rematch for Dragoon to reclaim his honor from the rough defeat in the lab. He's endured much to get to this point. I mean, truly our poison luck was atrocious when having to face the bug trainers with 3 Pokemon each. Many defeats later, but we can finally have our vengeance. And what vengeance we did have. As our rival sent out their first Pokemon, Pidgey, Dragoon was ready to prove himself and was able to take it down in just 2 hits, only taking a single hit himself. After this, the true challenge, which ended up not really posing a challenge at all, Bulbasaur came out, and just the same was defeated with only 2 hits, only retaliating with a single tackle. Now having redeemed himself, Dragoon claimed his victory, and with the trainers of Viridian Forest already defeated, we were ready for the next challenge on our journey. Brock, before I'd even begun, wasn't a gym leader I was too worried about. We of course had the type advantage, and we were going to be doing our first attempt at level 14. I figured it should have been a cakewalk. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not like we had to try multiple times, but while grinding with only Bubble at our disposal, it really showed how little special attack we had, which did concern me slightly before going into it. You can see even on the gym trainer that we weren't able to take out their Pokemon in just 1 hit, even though we had the advantage and even a couple levels on them. Granted, we are equipped with a decent defense stat ourselves. I was worried about being slowed by Rock Tomb and whittled down before we could finish the job. Glass Cannon isn't the best description of Krabby all the time, but it can be an apt one, especially when speed isn't something we excel at either. Unless we have some levels on our opponent, we will most likely have to take a hit before we can put out our high attack. In this case as well, it wasn't even our high attack being used, it was our much lower special attack. Something that we'll be talking about on a couple more occasions. Luckily, these concerns were put to rest once the battle started. Taking down Brock's Geodude was just as easy as the gym trainers. In fact, they both just used Defense Curl, which allowed me to get straight to Onyx without even being touched yet. Which was a big relief. However, there was still room for things to go wrong when I realized Onyx moved before us. I was suddenly intentionally watching the screen as I awaited what he threw at us before we could make our moves. Once again, as luck had it though, the attacks against us were not the best. We got binded a couple times, one of which missed, and took the residual damage from it. The move choice paired with our type advantage was enough to come out on top, even if it took a few hits just to take down Onyx with a water move. If he would have paired Bind with Rock Tomb, we could have been in some more trouble. But I guess Brock was just trying to take it easy on us, seeing as it was our first badge, and with that, we were able to obtain our first badge of the run, and secure a good start. We proceeded through the next route in Mount Moon without really any trouble. We got a bit of experience along the way and didn't really hit any snags, until Super Nerd Miguel. He has 3 Pokemon, a Grimer, Voltorb, and Coughing. As mentioned previously, our luck with being poisoned is horrendous. He sent us back to the start of Mount Moon once before we were able to get past him, and even then we did so by holding on by a thread. While trying to take out Grimer in one hit, it allowed him to poison us with poison gas. This put a timer on the rest of the battle, and made any incoming attacks expedite that clock. Voltorb made sure to dwindle our chances with a few well-placed attacks before we could take him out. Honestly, the critical hit on Coughing, allowing for a one-shot, is probably the only reason we made it out the second time round. After a quick antidote, our reward for beating the Exit Guard Miguel was none other than Lord Helix himself. I hope he finds his home inside my bag comfortable, for this is where he will stay this run. Let me know what fossil you all take. I know this subject is quite divisive amongst the community. Next up is the 2nd Gen Leader Misty, and I wasted no time going to try immediately upon arriving in Cerulean City. We were practically at the level 21 cap anyway, so it was a good time for the attempt. Sadly though, an attempt is all it was. We were able to get past Staryu reliably. Trust me, I attempted multiple times. But our special defense just wasn't going to cut it on evil leveling. So, in order to attempt another possible obstacle on our way, as well as gain a couple levels before attempting Misty again, we headed north for the 3rd rival fight. Now facing 4 Pokemon, granted one only teleports, it wasn't going to be a small task either. It didn't look like it was going to go our way from the very first turn. We were hit by Sand Attack before we could take down Pidgeotto, and Bulbasaur landed a Leech Seed on his way out as well. Luckily, Abra was next, but Leech Seed was still taking away at our health while I set up Hardens, in hopes that when Rattata came out we could survive his quick attacks. And while it was a risky move, it ended up paying off, as we tanked the quick attack and took down the Rattata to win the battle, unlocking the Nugget Bridge and the rest of the northern area to train for the next attempt on Misty. Although, before we go straight back into it, this is about the time in the stream where I had the brilliant idea to teach Krabby Thief. Starmie is a part psychic after all, so this could have given us the edge we needed to win. However, in Gen 3 that's not really the way it worked out. Yes, it is still a super effective move, but in Gen 3 Thief, which in later generations is physical, is treated as a special move. That's because of how they did the original physical special split. All dark type moves are special in FireRed, even moves like Bite and things like that. So when we pair that with Krabby's abysmal special attack, which even at this level was only around 16, we were doing far worse than just sticking with our regular attacks. This also raised some concerns for later in the game. Vice Grip or Stop won't be able to hit the ghost types Agatha uses. We can learn Dig, but it won't affect Gengar or Haunter. Better to just leave those worries for when we get to them. Our current worry is still Misty. We tried again at level 24, but as alluded to, our Thief strategy sorely failed us, and with only a couple more levels under our belt, Starmie was still able to easily take us down with a couple water pulses. So, we went back to train until we came back again at level 26, hoping for better luck, and maybe enough attack to overpower the evolved Starmie. While luck seemed to be more on our side, allowing us to land a critical hit on the opposing Starmie, it still wasn't enough to finish the job. If we would have been able to hit that critical hit just one move prior, that could have been the victory. But I didn't really feel like losing over and over, just hoping our crit luck panned out perfectly. Especially given I've yet to mention that we get confused by Water Pulse almost every other time we attempt this battle, so I pushed on to level more. During this bout of training, we finally were able to learn Stomp, not only a power increase, but also now the valuable flinch chance. Along with that, we saw the first time Krabby went to evolve. Later, I obtained an Everstone to make the rest of the run a bit quicker, not having to watch the scene over and over again, but I figured it was still important enough to put into the first time it happened, especially since it was due to having to grind for the water gem. Finally, back at level 28, with our new attack and increased health pool, I was hoping we could finally beat Misty. Things were looking good when one Stomp took out Staryu, but then came out the real challenge of this battle. Starmie came out and immediately took out a third of our health with a water pulse. Just as luck would have it though, our Stomp took nearly exactly half of its health. From there we held on after a second water pulse and delivered the final blow, obtaining our second gym badge of the run. Definitely well earned by Krabby, and after our victory he was rewarded by replacing Bubble with water pulse and swapping out Mudshot with Dig. With having to grind up to nearly level 30 just to beat Misty, it did start making me think about some future fights. I didn't even want to think about Sabrina. If I could barely deal with special attacks that I was resistant to, what am I going to do against neutral, let alone super effective ones? Surge is next. But first, with our now high level, it was easy to quickly make our way to the SS Anne where the next rival fight takes place. It started out quite similar to our fight in front of the Nugget Bridge. Pidgeotto opened with Sand Attack, lowering our accuracy. Ivysaur followed with Leech Seed. I wasn't liking the look of things, but we were able to get past the first 3 Pokemon with no problems. Surprisingly, fight came to an abrupt halt whenever Kadabra took the field. We went for another Stomp, but it was disabled just before we could land it. With our health already whittled down, Kadabra followed up with a Confusion that took us out. Outplayed, but clearly not outpowered. Run it back. This time, Krabby was able to 2-hit and flinch both Pidgeotto and Ivysaur. We outsped in 1-hit Raticate, and fully prepared for the disable coming from Kadabra, we went for a Dig to make the final 1-hit KO and send our rival on their way once more. Knowing Surge was up next, this is when I procrastinated a bit and went to go get the Everstone for the rest of the run. Inevitably, I knew I must at least attempt Surge before moving on to the other gyms. Surprisingly, it wasn't as bad as I expected. From the levels we got from making our way to the Everstone, it was enough to give Krabby the speed to outpace his team. With 3 clean digs against each of his team, we were able to claim a victory and add a 3rd gym badge to our collection. I definitely expected this badge to be obtained much later, but then again we were much higher level at this point than I had originally thought as well. Though this happy surprise wouldn't be long-lived. Technically, the next gym leader we should be facing is Erica. She was just as scary as Surge to me before we even started. However, before we get to that, we find our rival once more in the Pokemon Tower. He has a couple new additions on his team and a Kadabra that still scares me from the last fight. It definitely doesn't give me any reassurances about Sabrina either. Once again, starting with Pidgeotto, we were able to take it down without a Sand Attack this time. We were able to luckily flinch 2-shot his Ivysaur again. Then came out the first new Pokemon, Gyarados, with Intimidate. Definitely not great for us, but after taking a bite that did a little more damage than I'd like, we flinched him on the next turn and finished him off. Next up, another new addition, Growlithe, with Intimidate. 2 attack drops are definitely not great going into Kadabra. Special attackers are when Krabby truly is a glass cannon. Luckily, we took out Growlithe with 1 dig, and out came Kadabra. We somehow outsped him and one-shot him with Stomp. A little anticlimactic, but I'll definitely take it. Now it's time for another real challenge, but this time we're at even bigger disadvantage. Our first attempt on Erica, we managed to score a critical hit on our Victor Bill and take it down, but we are quickly put to an end by 1 Giga Drain. That was as suspected. Instead of trying again, since it wasn't even close, I decided that we should go ahead and take out Team Rocket, bringing us to our first encounter with Giovanni. Another team that I wasn't too worried about. Sure, our special isn't that great, but a high damage stab water move still generally does the trick when it comes to his team. The only exception being Kangaskhan. Thankfully, with the flinch on the first turn from Stomp, we only had to survive 1 bite before taking them down as well. After taking out the Rockets, I figured I'd throw one more attempt at Erica. Yeah, that didn't go well. I once again took a step back from her to train more. I figured I'd go take out the dojo I referred to as a pseudo gym. It went pretty easily. I certainly took some hits, but with them hitting mostly on the defensive side, they didn't pose too much threat to Krabby. Seismic Toss got kind of annoying though. 4 levels higher from the training, I figured that there was a chance that I could take out the victory bell without needing a crit. I was wrong. Although, here's a sort of funny moment that happened when I went to go get the Poke Food from the Pokemon Tower. Interesting play. After that, we of course saved Mr. Fuji, even though he was there on his own accord. He repaid us by gifting us the Poke Flute. Since we were so nice, then it was time for a gym battle. Except this time I made my way all the way down to Koga. At this point, I figure I'm gonna have to be able to one-shot all of Erica's Pokemon to beat her. I honestly feel the same way about Sabrina at this point, but we don't have to worry about her until after Silphco anyway, so... Anyway, if you remember at the beginning of this run our luck with being poisoned, the trainers in Viridia Forest, Super Nerd Miguel, it hasn't been a great time. And none of that really changed. I decided to take out multiple attempts against Koga, because I threw myself at him probably 6 to 7 times before the look finally came out on our side. That's really all we needed as well. I grinded a little bit, but in the end it came down to getting good flinch luck, not getting my accuracy lowered by any of his coughings, not missing a bunch of moves to his minimizing muck, not getting poisoned by any of his team until wheezing, and I was holding a Petra Berry just so he wouldn't die from the tick damage. Being able to finally take down Koga put some more hope into the run. With the Soul Badge and Thunder Badge, we could now go anywhere on the map with ease. Seeing as there was only one badge left that I could currently access that I actually cared to attempt, I made my way to Cinnabar Island. Blaine originally was a gym leader I figured we could easily take down, especially since we were coming in at level 50 already, giving us a decent level lead, but once again we were let down on our first attempt due to our special defense lacking. We made it by the Growlithe in one shot, but the Ponyta was able to hang on in the red. Even though we resisted Fire Blast, its power was enough to take us just under half. On the follow-up attacks, we managed to take down Ponyta before it could finish us off. However, the much faster Rapidash came out and quickly finished us off with another Fire Blast. I ended up attempting Blaine a couple more times, but learning my lesson from Misty, I decided to go train. And what better way to do that than to clear out Silphco, home to the next rival fight, and one that truly posed a potential roadblock. Not only was Kadabra evolved into Alakazam, but Ivysaur into Venusaur as well. As usual though, we start with Pidgeot, we were able to flinch 2-shot it, moving on to the first of the 2 scariest mons he has for us. With some unknown forces wanting us to at least see the rest of his team, Venusaur missed Razor Leaf, and with a critical stomp from us, we took him down and moved on to Gyarados. Other than the attack drop from Intimidate, he wasn't able to do much as we flinched him twice in a row for the KO. Next up is Growlithe, and one dig is still enough to take him down, but once again the double attack drop going into now Alakazam was scary. Rightfully so as well. We managed to outspeed Alakazam, but he held on in the red. But in yet another stroke of luck, he flinched, and we finished him off with a stomp. That was probably the luckiest battle we've had yet. Immediately afterwards, we fought Giovanni for the second time. Admittedly, we lost on the first attempt due to, once again, poor poison luck, but on the following battle we cleaned up quite nicely. We took out Nidorino without getting poisoned by Poison Point. We used a few surfs on Nidoqueen, took a bit of damage from his Kangaskhan as we traded a few blows, then easily one-shot his Rhyhorn with the surf to take care of Boss Giovanni for good. Although he still has a gym badge we'll have to grab from him later. After the 6 levels we ended up gaining in Silphco, I figured it best we attempt Blaine once more. We honestly weren't too far off the first few attempts, we just didn't have the power to finish the job. Especially taking into account his team also drops our attack 2 stages by the time we face Arcanine. This time, we one-shot Growlithe and Ponyta with Dig. Rapidash came out, and not confident in our chances with another one-shot, I swapped a Stomp for the potential flinch. We didn't get it, and as a result, we were once again at half health. Luckily, now we outsped Rapidash, so we follow up with a Dig to easily take them down, finally bringing out Arcanine. We outspeed and go for the Dig in hopes that our attack is high enough with our level advantage, After he misses his Fire Blast, we come back up and land a critical hit for the one-hit KO, granting us our 5th badge of the run. That crit totally mattered. With many more levels on our side, I made my way back to Erica. While maybe not a very intense battle like some others, as predicted with the ability to one-shot all of her Pokemon with Stomp, her badge 2 was now ours, getting us up to a total of 6 and only 2 gyms left before we reach the Elite Four. With everything thus far, how do you guys think will fare? I'm most worried about the champion fight, I think. Before I get too far ahead of myself though, Sabrina's up next, and it's a battle I've been dreading since facing Misty. It started out well with a one-shot Stomp on Kadabra. Next up was Mr. Mime, and with a critical hit, Stomp one-shot again. Leading us to Venomoth, we outsped, but it held on in the red, thankfully missing its follow-up Supersonic. Sabrina used a Hyper Potion, but to no avail, as we scored another critical hit to finish off Venomoth, leaving the real threat and powerhouse of our team, Alakazam. As predicted, they outsped, but they wasted their advantage on Future Sight, allowing us to land one final Stomp to take them down. I'm sure if they would have hit a Psychic, it would have been over, but now we've obtained our 7th badge and leaving only one left, our last rematch with Giovanni. Going into this battle, I was quite confident. Both battles beforehand had gone quite well other than the off-Poison Point fiasco, although perhaps the confidence is what led to us losing our first attempt. Rhyhorn and Dugtrio were both easily taken down with Surf in one hit, further relaxing any fear of losing. But then, Nidoqueen came out and I went for the super effective Dig, to which she countered with Earthquake, making it do significantly more damage than it would have otherwise, as showcased with her follow-up Earthquake that only did about 30 damage. This left us way too weak to be able to finish off Giovanni's last 2 team members. So one last final rematch. As we retried the second time, Rhyhorn and Dugtrio both still went down with a single hit of Surf. This time, however, when Nidoqueen came out, I just continued using Surf, and the Earthquake she retaliated with only chipped a bit of health away before going into Nidoking. Knowing Earthquake was still an option, our Surf onslaught continued, taking down Nidoking in 3 hits after Giovanni used a Hyper Potion from the first attack. One final Rhyhorn was coming out to face us when we sent one final Surf to polish it off. Finally obtaining all 8 gym badges. Honestly, after Silphco, the last 4 badges flew by. It almost felt like a boss rush with how quickly we were going. Unfortunately though, we were about to slow way down. Just after beating Giovanni, I decided to make my way over to the game corner to pick up the Mystical Water, figuring it could come in real handy going into the Elite Four, seeing as our only real answer for the ghost Agatha uses is Surf. After obtaining our item, we made our way towards Victory Road. This is where we hit our road bump. After blasting through the last 4 gyms, our rival prevents us from going through the check gates and taking a triumphant stroll through Victory Road. I'm only going to end up putting in a few attempts, but just know that we grinded and attempted this fight for a solid 2 hours before we were able to finally beat him. First attempt was at level 60, and the way it started gave me some hope. Sadly, that hope wasn't enough to get us past this fight anytime soon. We managed to take down Pidgeot, which was definitely never a problem, unless they decided to open with Feather Dance that immediately killed the attempt. Then came out Venusaur. We got the lucky flinch on our first Stomp, but he tanked the second and slashed through the rest of our health with Razor Leaf. A few attempts later, I decided to teach Krabby Blizzard over Flail, seeing that it may help against Lance later anyway. The attempt where I tried this didn't go any better. Our special stat still sucks, and even with the large power Blizzard holds, Venusaur easily tanked the hit. Probably even better than against our Stomps. At level 65, we were finally able to make it past Venusaur. Pidgeot took a couple hits as normal, and then Venusaur came out, expecting about the same as before, but being pleasantly surprised as we were able to flinch him not once, but twice in a row. Next came out Rhyhorn, but they were easily taken down with one Surf, finally making our way onto Gyarados. We opened up with another Stomp that flinched, and after tanking our second, he set up Rain Dance. Not what I was expecting, but afterwards we hit him a couple more times with Stomp and took him down. Next came out Growlithe. With the rain up, I went for an easy one-shot with Surf and was onto his final Pokemon. As you might have guessed, it hasn't been a couple hours yet. He outsped but only used Future Sight. I had hoped I had gotten lucky like in Sabrina's gym, but no dice. After the 2 attack drops, our stomp only did about a third of his health. This was going to take a long time. A couple of attempts later, I was able to get to Alakazam again, and decided to try my luck with Surf, since I'd always have 2 attack drops going into him. It did about the same, if not less, and put into perspective that this would just take enough power and or luck to beat this battle. At level 67, I decided to replace Stomp with Strength. Our luck with Flinch wasn't really paying off that much, and I figured for the Elite Four we might as well go ahead and have the stronger move rather than gamble every battle on chance. You can see it does a bit more damage, but nowhere near enough to one-shot Venusaur, and there's no chance we're surviving a Razor Leaf. It took until level 72 before I made it to Alakazam again. The only reason we made it as well is Venusaur somehow missed us with Razor Leaf. In all the attempts that had never happened before, the rest of the battle went pretty much the same. 2-shot Pidgeot, 1-shot Rhyhorn and Growlithe, throw a couple hits on Gyarados before we take him down, all leading to the face-off with Alakazam. Somehow we had gained enough speed to go first. I was shocked and thought that maybe this could be the one. Gyarados had set up Brain Dance before I took him down, and I was holding Mystic Water. I thought I had won. Even if I didn't one-shot after all, he'd been opening with Future Sight every time I got here. Yet, after only doing 2/3 of his health, he followed up with Psychic. I guess if he isn't faster, it changes what he does, meaning we had to go back to grinding. 16 full levels later from our first attempt, trumping even the self-kill rival fight, we got probably the best luck of the run. The same old with Pidgeot. Venusaur came out and we ended up landing a critical strength, and finally had enough power to make it a one-hit KO. Rhyhorn still easily went down to Surf. Gyarados was sent out and survived a strength with just above half health. All I did was set up Rain, and we got a high roll strength to finish him off. Growlithe had no chance with a Rain boosted Surf. Then finally, after hours of grinding attempts, we were back at Alakazam and we went for a strength. But he held on in the red. I lowered my head knowing what was coming, until it didn't. For whatever reason, he used Calm Mind. We were outspeeding him, so we easily finished him off and finally could proceed to the Elite Four. I'm sorry that so much time was dedicated to this fight, but once again I would just try to highlight the specific points of progress. Even the final battle was just pure luck. I'm definitely not looking forward to the champion fight now. Do we have a long wait before we get to that though? I'm going to show you each of the times we first beat each of the Elite Four members, and expand a bit on each member. In a short time you will find out the reasoning for this. Go ahead and make any final predictions whether or not you think we can win. First is of course Ice-type expert Lorelei, who first started attempting her at level 77 for some context. Finally at level 84 we found our way to victory. Hailstorm after Hailstorm, Krabby trudged through with determination. Dugong on this attempt was taken out with 1 strength due to a crit. On most other attempts it would take 2. Cloyster was always one of the key players on whether or not we could win the fight. They were built like a Stallmon, and it shows. Luckily, after hours of attempts against the team, it became easier and easier to read into what moves would be used and play around the protects. The amount of times this Pokemon was able to protect itself twice in a row, truly astonishing. Slowbro just as well could seal our fate with 1 move, Yawn. Luckily in this attempt, we did enough damage to 2-shot and he only used Amnesia. Jinx was never an issue unless we had been yawned by Slowbro. We've been able to one-shot Jinx since level 77. Then finally Lapras. Cloyster would normally always determine whether we could take a hit from Lapras or not, ending an attempt or finally claiming victory. On this attempt, we hit Lapras for about half health. With what was restored with the Citrus Berry, I assumed we wouldn't be able to finish them off. Yet, with Ragoon relatively healthy this attempt, we tanked the Surf, and we were able to get a lucky crit to finally take down Lapras. Bruno was never really an issue. We actually only ever lost to him on our very first attempt. We got unlucky on Machamp, and it ended up taking us down. He never got so lucky again though. Onix was an easy one-shot with Surf. Hitmonchan also went down in 1 hit of Strength. Hitmonlee just the same right after, and then Machamp came back out. We did a little more than half of his health before he used Scary Face, allowing him to hit a cross chop for about 40 damage just before we finished him off with Strength as well. His last Onix was also an easy one-shot with Surf, and he only ever got easier from there. Next up is Agatha, one of the Elite Four I've been dreading the most. She definitely never got easier, and it shows. Finally obtaining my first victory at level 92, her first Gengar almost always opens with a double team. So we hit Surf once for free, bring him to half, and then just hope to hit the follow-up. Which, in this attempt, we did. Golbat came out and was able to hang on in the red from strength, allowing him to confuse us. As Agatha healed up Golbat, we hit ourselves for a bit of damage, then we brought him back down to red, tanked a bite, and finished him off. Arbok is next and has Intimidate. We outsped and go for a dig, making him miss a Sludge Bomb before we leave him on a sliver. Oh, how I loathe Intimidate. We tank another bite, now under half health, before finishing him off with Strength. Next up was the much scarier Gengar. I assumed we lost at first as we immediately got put to sleep, yet for 2 turns in a row he just hit us with Sludge Bomb, which we took quite nicely. Then, on the turn we woke up, we knocked him to a sliver as he finally went for Nightmare. Yet, it was too late. Agatha used a full restore, but since we outsped, 2 Surfs knocked out Gengar, leaving Haunter, but we were barely hanging on ourselves. Luckily though, we got the critical hit one-shot Surf to finally make our way onto Lance. While we didn't beat Lance until we had already hit level 100, the difficulty didn't come from his team so much as it came from chance. We were able to guarantee one-shot his Dragonairs with Blizzard. It's just a matter of hitting an 85 accuracy move 2 to 3 times in a row that did us in most of the time. We started off with Gyarados, which has Intimidate, and honestly if it didn't, we could probably one-shot the Dragonairs with Strength, but Intimidate. Anyway, we start with a nice one-shot crit on Gyarados, saving us some precious HP. Next is the first of the Dragonairs. We managed to hit Blizzard for a 1-hit. The second Dragonair comes out, and we managed to land Blizzard again. 3 desperately needed one-shots to make it Dragonite with full health. We open with a third Blizzard, but end up missing, although Dragonite just up Safeguard, allowing us to try once more and land a Blizzard. Leaving him on a sliver, he retaliates with a powerful Outrage, leaving us with only 53 HP. His Citrus Berry, though, seemingly pulls him out of the health range, and allows us to secure a knockout with Strength, leaving the last mon Aerodactyl, which was outsped and one-shot with Critical Surf, though I'm not sure we needed the critical. Finally, we arrive at the final battle, and after our fight before the Elite Four, I really wasn't sure we could do it. I assumed even at level 100 it would come down to some dumb luck that would hand us the victory. We'd probably have to get a critical hit on Venusaur and Alakazam for that matter, but just as always we start with Pidgeot. I decided to open with Blizzard for a potential one-shot. They held on with around 3rd left and hit an Aerial Ace. Definitely preferred over Sand Attack. Our rival uses a full restore, which allows us to finish off Pidgeot with 2 strikes. Next up was Venusaur, and where I saw it all coming to an end. I learned from last time there was no point in going for Blizzard, so hit with a Strength and hope for the best. He still hung on with around a 3rd. Before gathering Sunlight, he was using Solar Beam? This was something I wasn't counting on. A 2-turn move gave me the opening I needed and allowed me to finish off Venusaur without being hit. Then, once again, to my surprise, he sent out Alakazam. Alakazam before the 2 attack drops? It was all coming together. He was finished off with a single Strength, and now come Rhydon. He just as easily was finished off with a single Surf. With only 2 Pokemon left, he sent out Gyarados, the last challenging mon left. We opened with Strength, which left him above half. We took a Dragon Rage, leaving us above half as well. Then, with a well-placed crit, took out Gyarados. Only Arcanine was left. With 2 attack drops, and while holding a Mystic Water, I used Surf and watched his health slide down, until it stopped at 1. He sent back a powerful Flamethrower, but with having to come this far, Krabby held on strong and took the hit. What followed was a desperate attempt to delay the inevitable. Our rival kept healing Arcanine as we sent Surf after Surf, until we had no full restores left. His fate was sealed, our victory secured. Krabby had finally proven himself, and we became the champion of Pokemon FireRed. This was quite the run, and I hope you enjoyed watching as much as I enjoyed making it. There were definitely a few mess-ups here and there, but I am planning on continuing to make things and slowly improve. This was actually my first challenge run I had ever done, at least with any progress. I know I have a couple on my channel that we started. I have a couple more ideas in the works, so be sure to keep an eye on my Twitch for upcoming streams. Videos will follow here afterwards, of course, once I have a chance to edit them down anyway. Though, if you've made it this far, let me know if you'd also like a playlist with the VODs in them as well. I decided against it on this one, seeing as it's my first video in a while, so I wanted to make it as well as I could. It's also definitely the only video on my channel of this caliber, so I wanted to try my best. Anyway, if you like this video, then go ahead and leave a like, and if you feel like it, go ahead and subscribe as well. And if you want to see any of the upcoming things that I have planned, go ahead and follow me on Twitch. Until next time.